Do you think this is possible to go for like play this, win the game?
I think so. Hello and welcome back, everybody, to Battle Chats with Luis and Josh.
Hey everybody, I must forgive you, Luis. Though I've got a bit of a cold today. You might be able to hear it in my voice.
Can hear you just about, yeah. Don't worry, mate. Everybody gets those, especially in the middle of April. Yeah, it's right about the correct time for cold, I think. Yeah, just after the winter's gone.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you got little ones as well, because you sort of see that when they're ill, you're like, oh no, this is like foretelling what's going to happen to me.
Yeah, all I can say is stay away from me. Thank you. But no, welcome guys. We're here to introduce this nice, wonderful set review for Modern Horizons 3 Lite. Apologies. Outlaws of Thunder Junction. That's the correct one. That's the name of this set. A ridiculously powerful set, to say the least. I have no idea what Wizards is thinking, but let's do the deep dive and see what's going on with everything going on this set.
I know exactly what Wizards were thinking. I know exactly what they were thinking.
And what's that?
They were thinking yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay! Woohoo! Yeehaw! Sorry for everyone's ears if it's a bit loud.
That's right. The American coming out on you, Louis.
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm not even from Texas. I'm from Chicago. It's nothing to do with Cowboys, but here we are. Right. Getting into this, I think the first thing is probably talking about some of these mechanics. They seem a little pushed, most of them at least. We'll start out with the simplest, I think, I say simplest. It's probably going to get a lot of judge calls. Judge, is this a crime? Judge, is this a crime? Judge? Either way, I think it'll be straightforward once we get into the swing of things. So committing a crime. No, this isn't the same as when you stand up the little corner shop that's by yours. This is slightly different. It's whenever you target an opponent or one of their stuff being a permanent, their graveyard, a spell on the stack, those kind of things. Every single one of those causes, or even a trigger actually, causes a crime to be committed. I think we're going to get a lot of memes out of this good old mechanic, but it seems kind of fun as well. I think it's nice of Wizards to let us be the villains for once in Magic.
See, I don't like the stigma this is doing to interaction, because I love interactive games. I'm a tempo player. I like interaction, and the fact that it's called a crime now is, well, maybe I could take the villain arc.
It's rich. You've been the villain ever since I've known you, Mr. I played Infect and Dredge, and these are fair and fun Magic decks that everyone should enjoy. No, this is crimes were meant for you, my friend.
Well, maybe it's something I need to adopt.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's essentially
a crime,
that's essentially what committing a crime is. Well, we'll see what exactly happens, because it's very on the card what exactly this card's going to do, whether this mechanic's going to be strong or not. Some of them are really small, not very important. Whereas you have cards like the new card by Nathan Stoyer, the world champ, right? His committing a crime seems a little strong when combined with a few more card draw effects. I'm expecting it in something like Esper Rafine to make some headway. We'll see what happens there. Either way, that's committing a crime. On to plot. Now this is what I think is the most powerful mechanic by far in the set. I think plot is going to be ridiculous. There is nothing fair or okay or remotely fine with casting free spells. Now, it's not fully free, because obviously you're paying for it up front before it does anything. A little bit of a tempo loss. But when you can do plot on a lot of the cards, especially because of some cards that you'll see up ahead that allow you to put plot on them, I can't see this being fair in the slightest. It is going to be broken.
I do think like some of the plot cards I've seen, particularly with sort of the I think the sort of cards you'd see in draft, do require a bit of, well, quite skill intensive. You got to think maybe 2-3 turns ahead, which I really like the thought of that. I like being able to being challenged or challenge the player to think that far ahead in the game. But as we'll talk on this pod with certain cards and how that mechanic can be potentially abused, I do think generally when mana is, or when cards are free, tends to create this sort of, I don't really feel like I'm playing Magic. I feel like I'm playing on hard, like on easy mode.
Absolutely, and we'll see how Plot makes this work, because one of the big things to remember with Plot is when you put this card into its exile zone, after you've paid whatever cost is related to it or ability to allow it to be plotted, that card can only be played at sorcery speed. It's very, very relevant and very important. That means that if you plot a counterspell, well, you've just played yourself, to say the least. It's not going to work. So be very careful how you use your plot, especially upcoming in the sealed environment for pre-release. I have a feeling people might not realize that when they they use their Jace and plot a counterspell, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. Hopefully people read their cards. Reading the card explains the card, as the old saying goes. On from Plot, we have what I think is most likely a limited mechanic. Maybe it'll have some effect in Standard. Every so often you get these cards that do. But it's Saddle. Saddle is essentially a mixture of crew and I think it's called Enlist. I think that's the name of the other mechanic, where you attack, and when you're attacking, you can tap other creatures to make it, give it an effect of some sort. Saddle is not when you attack; it's sorcery speed before you attack. So it sounds like a great way of, I'm going to saddle up my rhinoceros or whatever card you're using. In response, kill it. Oh, okay, great. This is fantastic.
Commit a crime.
Commit a crime, exactly. We'll see what happens. It is not the best, but it might be okay. We'll find out. It is a very fun mechanic. I think it's going to be very yippee-ki-yay cowboy style with all the mounting and settling up. I think it's really, really fun. But it's definitely, for me, a more mainstay draft and sealed environment, limited, than it is a constructed staple.
It's definitely on a flavor with the set. And I think in that sort of environment, say your pre-release environment or whatever, you can go and you can really feel the sort of, I suspect that you can really feel sort of the theme of the set, which is trying to push with this mechanic. But I agree with you. I think beyond that, I've not seen anything that, especially the sorcery speed stuff, that you can't even do. It negates your combat tricks. It negates in response, doing it in their turn, sort of thing. I think it's the sorcery speed sort of aspect of it is very off-putting.
It's a little odd, isn't it? I have a feeling we're going to get a few judge calls on that as well during pre-release. For Judge, my opponent attempted to saddle up their yippee-ki-yay horsey at the beginning of combat. I don't think they can do that. We'll see what happens there. It's an interesting mechanic, but I'm not expecting too much out of it. I can't wait to eat my words and be surprised when Saddle is the number one mechanic and Plot isn't used at all. But we'll see what happens with it. After that, we have the last new mechanic of the set, which is called Spree. Now, Spree is interesting in the fact that it only seems to appear on 1 mana cards, so 1 CMC cards, or mana value cards for all the new players. And you have to choose one of the Spree abilities on there. You have to. You can't choose not to. There's a lot of different cards with Spree that all do wildly different things. I love modal cards. They're some of my favorites. I'm a diehard fan for Cryptic Command. Rest in peace, that card. That's a foreshadowing for the future. It's one of those cards mechanics, that makes me happy as a Magic player. I like having choice and living or dying by that choice, because it makes or breaks the skill of a player, I think. It's really, really cool. There is so many interactions that come of it, and so many hidden things that you never knew existed when you can do modal kind of abilities. And I can't wait to see how that affects the game. It's a lovely thing to have in Magic, I think. There's been a lot of modal cards lately. this is really interesting take on it as well, because you can do them all as long as you have enough mana, and there's so much selection in the process of it, which is, I think, rather interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my favorite cards, I love the sort of command cards. Like Prismari Command is one of my favorite cards. Colligan's Command is one of my favorite cards. It's sort of these skill testing cards, which can be they're usually jacks of all trades, masters of none, but they really come up. That's sort of why they're powerful, because they come up in very niche situations, or sometimes situations where, you know what, I've got this card, I could just use it, or it could even change the outlook of a game. And it's interesting to know that the fact that these spree cards, they are 1 mana, but you can't cast them for 0, so you can't do things like add a storm count or just, you know, cast it for the sake of casting it with no effect. You need to choose a mode. So even though the CMC in the card is 1, you need to choose the kicker cost.
And often better than a master of 1. That's the good old line for that one. So I think this will be very cool. I'm excited to see how many players get absolutely dunked on by Chalice of the Void in some of the older formats, when you try to cast this card only to realize that CMC is still 1. But it's an exciting thing.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, the card doesn't change its mana value. It's 1. It's like kicker.
Right.
You know, a kicker card, when you kick it, it doesn't become a higher mana cost. It's still exactly what it was. Unless I'm missing something in the rules, but I don't think I am. I think right now it's still stated that way. Those cards are 1 cost. And so I think we're going to see a lot of people get got as well when they try to plot this card, or these modal cards, because you can plot some of the smaller value cards, but just because you're casting it for plot doesn't mean you get the other effects for free. You still have to pay those extra costs. So let's see what happens. And those are the mechanics that we're expecting to do a bit more than just be flavor text on cards, as we sometimes see. And hopefully the set gives a lot more, because it is a very powerful set, and I really, really hope that we see some big changes to some of the formats, because they've been somewhat stagnant in some places, and this shakeup would be really, really nice.
I think to match its sort of power is also matching sort of its confusion. Now, and you and me both would probably agree that when you look at this set, you think, wow, there's so many set symbols. What is going on?
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, that's for sure. Why don't you explain a little bit about some of the set symbols and what exactly they mean for us, Josh?
So before we go into it, what they've identified is the sort of failure of the last what was the additional set called?
Aftermath.
The Aftermath set. That just completely flopped financially for them. So what they've decided to do is they decided to bung all these Aftermath sets in with the main set. So you get them in collector boosters, and you get them in the new boosters, what they call play boosters.
Play boosters, yeah.
You can pull these cards by just opening normal boosters, along with the reprint cards that they've put in, and all these cards you can pull from these boosters are all going to be able to be played in limited, which limited is going to be wild. Like you're going to cast Bolt, and Oko.
I can't wait when I get absolutely just dunked on by someone who hasn't picked up a Magic card ever before because they grabbed Oko. I'm going to cry. It's going to be a rough time in the limited environment, but hopefully it's not too often that those kind of effects happen.
So you've got 2 bonus sheets with this set. You've got the what's it called? You've got the breaking news, and then you've got big score.
Big score,
so
yeah.
The breaking news one is the one that looks like almost like a jail cell prison symbol, and then the big score is like almost like a bank vault. And the way I see it is that one of them is like special edition version. So the breaking news is like special edition versions of cards in the main set, and then the big score is sort of like your extra set that you would have got before they tried to change the way they've distributed the cards. Then you've got special guests, which is your reprint sets, and you've got some real cool reprints in there, and some needed ones, I would say. But we'll talk about that a bit later on. And then you've got the list in there that's coming back with this set, and then you've got obviously the actual
special guest as well. Yeah.
special guest and then the normal set itself. So that's, was it, what, 5 is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah, 5.
Yeah, it's five different symbols, I think. And if you include the commander set, then you have 6. Something like that.
What do you think the implications of that are? What do you think the problems are for that? Because I could think of particularly the problem I could think of is for new players.
It's confusing. It's confusing. Could you tell me off the top of your head which ones are standard legal and which ones aren't?
No, not without looking at my cheat sheet here.
Exactly. It is not easy to know unless you've read it up somewhere, figured it out before going to an event. If you are a new player opening a pack and you see, oh, I just pulled this card, I'll put this into my standard deck for the standard league and FNM or anything like that. Gotta be careful. If it has a jail cell, if it has a star, those 2 are not legal. If it has a vault or a hat, yeah, those 2 are legal. But it can't be a hat inside of another orange thing, because that's not, it's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. You have to be very careful with it.
Yeah, personally, I don't like this, because to me, standard is a bit of a sacred format that they're sort of defiling, because to me, like the whole process, we spoke about this on 2 pods ago, where standard should be the intro format. You get all these, you can open your booster, you can play those cards, you can brew, you can put a deck together to play at local FNM. For a new person to come in to buy packs, because when you're a new player, you love to buy packs, and you get these exciting cards you want to play. Hold on there, fella, you can't play that card. That is not standard league. I'm like, why? And then you have to explain.
It's definitely something that felt slightly unnecessary for some of them. For example, the big expansion, the ones that are the aftermath. They're going to be standard legal. Why not just give them the normal set symbol? Why give them a fresh new set symbol? What does it actually add? I don't think it adds much. But fair enough.
I suspect they've already printed the cards and they just threw them in the new set.
Maybe.
Sure, isn't like they print the cards so far in advance and then
they do that a fair bit.
So me and Louisa put together a list of cards that we find really exciting from this set. Obviously, this set is non-exhaustive, and we're not really going to be talking about sort of commander cards. But these are cards that we find really exciting in the 1v1 space.
And now the exciting moment, guys. The actual cards themselves from Modern Horizons 3, Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Sorry. We have the enemy fastlands finally coming back. People are excited. Everyone was hoping this would happen. Wizards isn't known for actually completing their sets of lands in the same standard rotation. And, well, we have it. Obviously, it's a reprint, but it's a very good one, considering quite a few decks that are being played in standard right now. We're hurting for them. The green-black aggro and the Boros Convoke decks were really, really wanting these cards to come into play. And Concealed Courtyard, Spire Bluff, Botanical Sanctum, all these other, to complete the set are finally back as well, which might actually push those decks to being relevant. We haven't had a black-white deck for a while. I don't think we've had a green-blue one either. And then Izzet's been a little bit dead in the water for not terribly long. Izzet's, I think their favorite, but we'll see exactly what happens there.
I'm excited to play some of these in Toxic.
Of course you are.
Because the Toxic mana base is horrendous. And if it's not horrendous, it's painful. And my worst matchups when playing that deck are the aggro decks. Often enough, I have to pay 2, 3, 4 life here and there to cast my spells, and it hurts. And because the deck is quite low to the ground as it is, these lands look very nice.
And then we have Colossal Rattlewurm, making a lot of headway in many scenes. This card is being talked about as rather pushed, but also a very happy card for many people, because green has not gotten the most love in Standard and Pioneer lately. Ever since the Karn banning, we haven't really seen green that much. Yes, it's in Domain, and it's technically a color that exists, but it's not really the main color for most decks, especially as the standalone strong color of a deck. In green-black, what's the strong color? Black. In Domain, what's the strong color? I would say white. It's usually the most relevant in terms of what they're casting. So Colossal Rattlewurm is quite the card. It is a 6/5 for 4 mana, 2 and 2 green pips. And it has Flash as long as you control a desert. Flash on a ridiculous body for 4 mana is quite strong. Plus trample, and when it dies, you can exile it from your graveyard to have a little rampant growth effect from any desert you have in your library. With many of these deserts have many abilities as well. There is the pinging deserts that are new to standard, which will help you commit many, many crimes, which is fantastic. Or a lot of the ability deserts that are already a mainstay in Pioneer. So I'm excited to see what this card does, how it shakes up the format, and how pushed it really is.
This card's exciting. I like this card. So this next card, I really enjoy. When I saw this, I got really excited by it. Harvester of Misery. It's a creature spirit. It's 3 generic and 2 black. It's a 5/4 with menace. A lot of black creatures have menace, so it's very on flavor there. So when Harvester of the Misery enters the battlefield, all the creatures get -2/-2 till end of turn. Now this says reanimation target, or some sort of way to bring it back from your graveyard, wipe the opponent's board, do the things that black normally likes to do. But the other ability on it is for 1 generic and a black, you can discard Harvester of Misery from your hand, and the target creature gets -2/-2 till end of turn. This card is brilliant. This card is busted. It's so good.
Yeah, having a one-shot Elish Norn style effect when it enters the battlefield is pretty good. But then being able to get itself into the graveyard really easily is amazing for reanimation. Being a 5/4 menace is ridiculous. You guys have seen how much grief has done as a 4/3 or 4/2. Sorry, wait, 3/2. Wait, what is it again? Oh yeah, it keeps reanimating and becoming bigger. But either way, massive thing. It is an interesting effect. I think it's going to see a lot of headway in standard, especially with Massacre Girl, the new mythics of her. Because her ability triggers whenever something dies with a less than 0 toughness, which is really relevant for drawing cards off of, well, a pretty sick ability. So we'll see what happens with this card. I think it's going to make some good headway, and it's going to be lights out, I think, for Convoke pretty soon, with a lot of these cards being printed that absolutely wrap the board. We'll see what happens there.
I agree. This card is going to fit straight into the sort of black mid-range sort of decks, because this is realistically, you could cast this card, especially in standard. This is on curve to a lot of the top end sort of stuff. Also, for 2 mana, kill most things is very good. Particularly the fact that you can't interact with that. Like, it's discard. It's an ability. Like, you can't counter it. You can't. I guess you could protect against it, but you can't spell pierce it. I like this card. This card's a good card.
Getting around a lot of that interaction is very strong for such a unassuming card, I would say. But it's really cool that we have some more interaction. Reanimation being a key thing for this card, I think, is really exciting. So we'll see what kind of headway it makes.
So speaking about reanimating and cheating things in from the graveyard, a really good card's been printed into standard in the form of Rest in Peace. Now that card is impactful, particularly in standard.
It is one of those cards to watch out for. You know, it's a 2 mana enchantment. When Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, it exiles everything in both graveyards, in all graveyards. And if any card or token would be put into the graveyard, instead of being put there, it gets exiled. It's a very strong effect for 2 mana. We've seen its impact in many other formats. You know, it's legal in every other format right now. And now being legal in standard as well is... well, a lot of those reenact the crime, what's it called? The Insidious Root style graveyard shenanigans decks. They're not going to be happy to see this card. Those cards are just, the decks are just starting to get off the ground, and this is going to put them, rest in peace, to say the least.
So I feel like in standard there's a real space for the graveyard decks to sort of take over, and there was a lot of powerful graveyard sort of aggro decks. I mean, there's the green black sort of reanimate aggro deck that uses that uses, is it Tyvar to put things in the
good old Tyvar.
And it's like I felt like there was no real answers to those sort of decks, because they're doing really powerful things, and they're cheating in some cards, and they're going off on a really low to the ground sort of axis. And Rest in Peace is just, I personally think Standard was missing this card.
Yeah, it's definitely a great answer. And, well, I'm glad to see it again. As much as I dislike the card because I'm a Phoenix player at heart, I'm happy to see it come back and keep some of those decks in check. And that leads us to another card that says, if you like to play your strategies, no. Grand Abolisher for 2 white pips. It's a human cleric creature. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. Very strong card for the mono white style decks, or even for some more just go white creatures that tend to have white in it. If people hated Teferi, this card is loathsome to say the least. I'm sure in a lot of other Commander pods people hate it, but we'll see what it can do in Standard. It is a relatively easy creature to get rid of at just being a 2/2. However, its effect is very big. It can stop a lot of the degenerate things happening from the more Flash style decks, as I do think a lot of Flash cards being printed, shout out to Colossal Worm over there, is going to be a problem. And this can definitely take some good effect on those cards, keeping them a little more fair and a little more just. Not only in Standard, but also in Pioneer.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like what sort of broken decks could just play this card, because the 2 pips sort of limit to where this can go. Because I'm thinking, what broken decks are in Pioneer? You've got Lotus Field. Imagine if this effect was in against Lotus Field, you're just not gonna. It just says I win, right? The sort of control decks, like they don't really want to do anything in their turn. The aggro decks, yeah, they can go big in their turn, but guess what? You're going to untap and they're going to face a board wipe. So personally, this effect is good, but in the formats we're looking at, Standard, Pioneer, for 2 white pips, like what broken decks would make use of this? Can you think of any?
The one card, or one deck even, I think it might actually make some headway in, is Amelia.
Ooh.
It's one of those decks that definitely wants you not to be able to do anything while it's doing its combo, and it's very scary there.
And this could be Coco'd in as well.
Yep. It could be corded as well. Imagine that. Cording in response, getting this guy out, and then stopping your opponent from interacting with you for the rest of the turn. That's scary.
That is actually something I didn't actually think about till just now, till you mentioned it. And be able to hardcast it as well for 2 white is realistic in that deck.
It's very realistic. They play enough mana that just makes other colors that I think will be fine. You can even fix the mana base. We'll see exactly what happens. But that's probably the spot I'd watch out for it the most in Pioneer.
Maybe this will be the card that finally pushes that combo, the Wizards to make action on the combo, because I've heard it's causing quite a stinking Pioneer. It seems like almost like a three deck format right now.
And from things stopping fun to something very fun, Slickshot Show-off, the best pseudo prowess creature I think we've seen in a long time. I remember when people were losing their heads off of Sprite Dragon. And now we have this good old bird. It's a 1 and a red for a creature bird wizard. Flying haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Slickshot Show-off gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Plot 1 and a red for a 1/2.
The fact that this has plot is what it is testament to what we talked about before, with this high skill setting up, thinking 2-3 turns ahead. Because you could plot this, turn 2, whatever. Then you could sculpt your hand. So I'm thinking like modern, sculpt your hand with cantrips. Then almost go. Do you think this is possible to go for like, play this, win the game?
I think so. Especially when you look at it, that plot isn't exclusive. It doesn't say if you have one thing plotted, you can't do another thing plotted. Imagine if you can play slightly slower, more reactive at the beginning turns. You have your 1 mana, just hold up a kill spell of some sort. Turn 2, you plot this. Turn 3, you plot this if you happen to have another one plus a random spell. What do you do turn 4? 2 of them come out, cast everything you can, hold up protection, hit someone for 1 billion. What are they going to do?
Does this play like Phoenix in Pioneer?
Ooh,
or is it more like Infect? Or is it more like Kiln Fiend for Pauper? Like, this card is good. I like that.
And it has the wizard text. It's very relevant. We'll see what happens there, and I'm very excited to see how we can show off with Slickshot Show-off.
So next up, we've got Pest Control. Now, Pest Control it's caused a lot of waves on Twitter when it got announced. Like I saw on Twitter, Facebook as well. Like a lot of on the social media platforms, this has caused a lot of discourse in the fact that people either really love it or they like this is going to ruin my game because, well, basically the card says destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less, and it's a white and a black, but it also has cycling for 2. So it doesn't all sound that impressive until you start thinking about it. Now, in formats like Legacy, when you look at like the Urza Saga's decks, like they play 0 to 1 mana artifacts, they go really low to the ground. This just hoses that game plan. You look at things like Convoke. Convoke plays 8 Thrabbing Inspectors, plus with the artifacts and also the what's that spell? Castle Goblins.
Oh, the
Gleeful
Demolition or
Gleeful Demolition.
Demolition.
Demolition. This card just says no to all that. Like, and if this card doesn't become relevant, you just cycle it away. Like, why has this card got cycling? That seems totally unnecessary.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that makes you wonder who in the world thought that what this card was missing was cycling. Right? When you hear destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less, that effect costs 3 mana normally. It's not a 2 mana effect. And now they gave it cycling as well because, sure, that is nuts.
Exactly. And this card hits Delver Secrets, it hits Darcy, it hits Ragavan, it hits Death Shadow. It's all these low to the ground tempo sort of threats for 2 mana. And if it becomes irrelevant or you want to just thin your deck out, you just cycle it. The perfect bridge between the 1 and 3 mana sort of threats.
Yep. It also absolutely whomps Convoke. Convoke is not happy to see this card. We'll see what exactly happens, but I think this is maybe looking to be one of the more expensive cards of the set.
I would agree. This card is going to see play multi-formats.
For sure. And in almost stark contrast, we have Final Showdown for a single white mana, but it has Spree, one of those mechanics we were talking about. Now, this card is exciting because it has 3 very interesting modes, one of them being probably the most interesting. The first mode, for a single generic, all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn. A almost dressed down kind of effect. It doesn't keep it on forever. It's just for everything that's on the board at the time, but very relevant for a lot of things that just kind of don't go away like they should because of their after effects. Number 2 is, again, a single generic. For choose a creature you control. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Sure, a protection spell. Not bad. It's nice to have. And the most exciting mode. 3 and 2 white. Destroy all creatures. Now I hear you. 5 mana, 6 if you count the first pip for a Wrath effect. That's not so exciting. It's instant speed, ladies and gentlemen. That is a very scary moment for Pioneer and Standard.
I can't remember the last instant speed board wipe other than Settle the Wreckage. Can you?
I think it was some 7-8 mana abomination that saw next to no play.
See, this card is one of those cards which is like, we were talking about like I really like options and things, but this card, if you look at Modern, this card solves the Urza Saga tokens. It also solves Territorial Cavu, which is everywhere right now. I mean, you think, oh, why don't we just play Dress Down? You know, that takes up that space, but the fact you've got a Dress Down ability with options is mental. It's mentally good. And it's also playing the decks like sort of your blue-white control decks have access to sort of dress downs as well, but they could just replace the dress downs and just play this because it does more things. It doesn't replace itself, but does it matter?
Yeah, it's a very scary effect. Instant speed wraths are overcosted for a reason. They're incredibly powerful. And I'm excited to see what people can make do with this card, as it's looking to be quite an effective tool for all these Blue-white players that love to have no fun whatsoever.
So this will see blue. This will be saying blue white pioneer for sure. I can see it being played in modern, definitely standard, 100%. I even think Domain might even play this a card like this. The 2 white might be a bit of a cost, but you've got what 6 turns to get it online.
Yeah, you have quite a bit of room to make sure this thing actually can work. So let's see what happens. Very exciting. Moving on to the next one. And if one spree card wasn't enough, here's another one. Smuggler's Surprise for a single green spree. The first effect being 2 generic, mill 4 cards. You may put 2 creatures and or land cards from among the milled cards into your hand. Decent, a little regrowth rebuy effect, but for 2 cards, not bad. Then for 4 and a green, so a total of 6 mana for this one. But you'll see why it's quite a strong one. You may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield at instant speed. That's going to surprise a few folks, to say the least. It's not a small ability, and we'll see exactly what happens there.
Ambush Attractor.
And after you get that going, you also have the third ability. For a single generic, creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It protects all the, ambush attractors you put onto the battlefield. Fantastic. It's exactly what you want. It's a very exciting card. It does a whole lot of stuff. Might be a really good card in mono green kind of devotion effects. That we lost that deck when good old Karn got banned. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
But it is making a comeback. A lot of good value green creatures are here, there, and everywhere. So we'll see exactly what happens with this card when it definitely will surprise some people, to say the least.
You've got mill 4 cards, but 2. You got your. I'm thinking like Greasefang, because that was what I played. I'm thinking the sort of green black mid range decks, along with Harvester we were talking about before. You can sort of maybe not play it from the graveyard, but you can play these big like massive threats at instant speed, but also the fact that you've got like a heroic intervention on top of that as well. Like the options are there. Like it's solving problems that you might not need to solve, but it's nice to have that solution there for certain points in the game. So another card I really like the look of is Aven Interrupter. Now I'm believe it or not, Luis says that I like to play all these stupid broken decks, but back when I first started playing Modern, I was into Spirits, and I loved the card Spell Queller. This reminds me a little bit like that. So Aven Interrupter is 1 generic and 2 white. It's a bird rogue creature, 2/2. It has flash, flying, and when it enters the battlefield, exile target spell and it becomes plotted. Spells your opponents cast from graveyards or from exile cost 2 more to cast. So what you can do is they, in their turn, want to do a board wipe. You flash this in, put that board wipe off by, I guess, a turn. I'm not sure if the effect from the below will cast towards plotted. I guess it would. So they'll have to plot it for an extra 2 mana, I guess. But if you try and counter a spell and in response you exile or plot that counter spell is as good as being countered, as Luis alluded to before. Like that counter spell is now like when you're going to social speed a counter spell.
Exactly. It's quite the powerful card. I'm expecting quite a few good things from it, and relevant enough. Graveyard and exile costing 2 more is not just by things that this has plotted, right? It's also for adventure cards. They're in exile. Or anything that you might cast from your graveyard. I don't know, maybe a Croxa, something like that. They're being cast from the graveyard. That's pretty relevant.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. I think this card's great. The Flash is great. Again, like there's a lot of these really powerful effects in white, 2 pips. So thinking of like Legacy, like this card actually might have been great in Legacy if it was 2 generic and 1 white, because you can cast it off City of Traitors or Ancient Tomb. But the fact that it's the double pips in there, sort of making these cards a little bit more fair, a little bit more low to the ground. A little bit higher from the ground, I think.
And speaking of putting things into plots, we have Jace Reawakened for blue. That's right, a 2-mana Planeswalker. Oh boy, joining the ranks of Renin 6 and good old Valky in the realm of potential broken 2-mana Planeswalkers. This is a card that we're going to see if it makes an impact or not. There's a lot of discourse whether it's going to be good or not because of its kind of interesting text. You can't cast this spell during your first, second, or third turns of the game. What do you think about that one, Josh?
Well, the fact that it says you can't cast a spell during your first, second, or third turns of the game makes me think of what's that ley line called?
Of Anticipation.
Ley line anticipation. So the meme was going, you play ley line anticipation because it says you can't cast a spell on your turn. It says nothing about you can't cast a spell on your opponent's turn.
Oh boy, I can't wait to do that. I've played Ley Line Anticipation in Modern before as a meme. I'll do it again with something even better. And let me tell you, Jace is quite a bit better. His first effect, a +1, is draw a card, then discard a card. Sure, we've seen that before. It's a mainstay of Jace Planeswalker cards, not a problem. His second ability, his second +1. Oh boy, that one is the one that we're excited to see if it can break the game. You may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. Now, Josh, tell me, what happens if you put a Valky under that effect?
Well, I'll tell you what happens, Luis, because what you can do is you can plot the Valky, and then the following turn you can cast yourself a Tybalt.
Oh boy, a 7-mana Planeswalker for free. I'm excited to see how much more busted we can make this Jace get with that kind of effect. You can play an Ancestral Vision and draw 3 cards the next turn, a Crashing Footfalls and make 2 4/4 Rhinos, a Living End, who knows? There's quite a few things you can do. It is definitely a very powerful card, but can we actually make it happen fast enough where it's relevant?
Well, what you can do with this is if you actually cast this on like fairly, quote unquote fairly, you can actually play it for 2 mana and still have 2 mana up for counterspell.
That's true. It's quite an effect. Oh man. I wonder if there's some effects with this card that I'm wondering if we can actually get off the ground. Maybe something like an As Foretold Jace deck. Maybe that's what we're waiting to see. You know, what the world was waiting for. Well, time will tell. It's still, it's a 2-mana Planeswalker. A little hard to actually cast it because of the effect it has. But it is 3 loyalty, which is pretty high for a 2-mana Planeswalker. Ren 6 has that same amount.
Yeah.
And it has a seemingly okay ultimate. Not that I think we'll get to see that one very often. Which is until end of turn, whenever you cast a spell, copy it. You may choose a new target for the copy. Fair enough. Seems fine. But it's definitely that second ability that we're going to keep an eye on.
Will you play this in Phoenix?
I think so. I think it has some room to be a grindy card in Phoenix. The draw and discard effect is relevant. The plot is interesting in setting up some of the future turns with Phoenix, as sometimes you run into turns where you want to cast more cards, but you run out of mana to try and get that third spell across, especially if you have to use something like Picklock Prankster through the Fey effect, which is 2 mana, to try and get your third spell. This will help out a lot for that kind of effect.
I'm excited to see what Spike comes up with this card.
Oh,
There's going to be some mental brews in Modern.
For sure. Spike is the king of brews, so we'll see what happens there. Talking about broken things, I have one that I personally think might be very broken. We'll see. I'm not 100% sure on it, as it definitely has some room for either way being really crap or really good. But that is Lotus Ring, a 3-mana artifact. It's indestructible for some reason. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has vigilance. And, this is the broken part, sacrifice this creature, add 3 mana of any one color. And it has an equip cost of 3. So sure, a high equip cost, but a really broken ability.
Why is it so? I mean, I'm struggling to see this because obviously you're not netting anything. But then I'm trying to think where this would go.
So this is where I think it might go. In some sort of red-white style hammer deck, potentially, or something along those lines.
Oh.
Yeah. What does Sigarda's Aid do? Attach it for free. Fantastic.
Yes.
Yay. What does what's his name? The 2-mana white steel paladin, I think. Pure steel paladin. He equips artifacts for free. Now we're seeing where the a lot of mana, a lot of stuff can happen kind of effect comes into play. And then in red, you have Fervent Champion, a 1-mana 1/1 haste creature that makes things cost 3 less to equip on himself. Now we're seeing a little more what's going on here. Now, while the card may not be innately super broken, I think it might make some really big combos, and that's what I'm afraid of. It's not a card I'm excited to see.
No, I mean, to me, in my P brain, like when I look at combo decks, I am not a combo player. Like I can't look at a way to win the game unless it's in combat. Really, like it's just not the way I operate. But it's going to take some big brains to pull this off. But I think you might be right. I think you might be onto something here.
It's really interesting because even with something like Tyvar, where it gives your activated abilities instant speed, if you're able to find a way to just get this ring equipping for cheap and just keep putting it on a bunch of your little creatures that are around, Tyvar allows you to tap them right away for mana because the ability is on the creature. So it's a really interesting effect that we'll see if it gets broken or not. Maybe I'm just, being, what's it called? The boy who cried wolf when nothing's happening. But it's an exciting card, and I'm happy. I'm ready to see what it can do.
But it has vigilance too, so like combat doesn't even tap this creature.
Correct. Yeah, it's one of those effects.
So an artifact that I'm excited about is Assimilation Aegis. Now, Assimilation Aegis is one generic, a white and a blue, and it's an equipment too. So I'm thinking Stoneforge Mystic already.
Makes sense.
Thinking more on the legacy side of things with this card, but when Assimilation Aegis enters the battlefield, exile to one target creature until Assimilation Aegis leaves the battlefield, so it's removal for one. So imagine this with Stoneforge Mystic, end of turn, removal, whatever. When Assimilation Aegis becomes attached to a creature, for as long as Assimilation Aegis remains attached to it, that creature becomes a copy of a creature card exiled with Assimilation Aegis. So imagine you exile there. I don't think you wouldn't get the ETB off a Traxxas, but if you took an Archon of Cruelty, for example, or even a Troll of Khazad-dûm or whatever dirty beastie that they might have, you're not only removing that creature, but you're getting a copy of that creature. So I'm thinking instant speed, take the creature, untap, it's already out, pay your 2 mana to equip it to your Stoneforge Mystic and attack and get those abilities off that creature. Like, this card's sick. Like even just removal instant speed in these sort of Esper Stoneforge sort of style decks. Even in modern, I could see this. Like this card's great.
It's a pretty powerful effect, that's for sure. And in the other formats, it's not exactly hard to cast. Who knows? You can see it. I can see it in quite a few realms. It's an exciting card, and it has room to be broken or be, well, not broken, but very powerful. And it's one of those cards that I'm kind of happy they printed. It's nothing I expect to be wildly out there, but it's a very fun and interactive card to have in a format.
I agree. And if your opponent is doing something disgusting and egregious, you're just using that to leverage the game plan back to you. So they're taking, like, I use the Archon, for example. They've got Archon out. You use this as leverage to then swing the game back into your favor at like sort of a fair axis. I like this card. I like it.
I agree. And speaking of artifacts and Stoneforge Mystic and all that kind of jazz, we have another interesting 1-mana artifact this time. So it's a good old Urza Saga target, Lost Jitte. For 1 mana, it's a legendary artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put a charge counter on Lost Jitte. Remove a charge counter from Lost Jitte and choose 1. Untap a target land. Target creature can't block this turn, or put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. And its equip cost? 1. Very cheap card, very easy to play. A great target for both Stoneforge and Urza Saga. Now, it's not exactly Umezawa's Jitte, is it?
No.
It's one of those cards that I'm not sure how to evaluate. When it comes to equipments and artifacts, I'm not your guy. I'm not the best at those. But it looks like it could have some room for doing some annoying busted things. Getting this attached to something like an Esper Sentinel is really annoying. It grows it,
Yeah.
so you have to pay more mana. It might just untap lands for the future to get you, some ramped up spells out. It's relevant enough. Or even on a Ragavan. If Ragavan can't be blocked, that's pretty good. Just depends how many charge counters you can actually get on the Jitte.
Because it only puts 1 charge counter every time it does damage, right? So you can't like get 2 and then untap 2 lands or I'm not sure about this card. Like none of those effects are really that scary.
Just gotta get a nice double striking creature out. That's it. Nice and easy. But it's
maybe it'd work with that your what's it called? It the that Slickshot Show-off.
Oh yeah, Slingshot Show-off. Yeah. The flying bird. Put it on that guy.
Because you get your trigger, your prowess trigger, because you maybe cast it, and then you equip it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not a fan of this card. I don't think
as you can tell, Josh is not the best builder of these kind of things either.
No.
But it's an interesting card. It's causing a lot of arguments online right now. Is it good? Is it absolute trash? It's a long call from Jitte. Should the original Jitte be unbanned and put back into modern? A lot of those little things. We'll see. I don't think so. I think the original Jitte is way too strong. But it's one of those things that time will tell.
I think if this was 2 mana, this wouldn't even be looked at, because the fact that the only reason it's being looked at is because you can get off Saga.
I think so as well.
So there is one more card I want to talk about. Is a reprint card, and this is not going to be seen playing in standard, but it's a really nice reprint, and that's Mindbreak Trap. Now, Mindbreak Trap is one of these cards that's gone really expensive all of a sudden. I think there's like $40 a card now in the US, maybe more.
I think it's closer to 80 if I remember right.
What?
It's a really expensive card.
And this was like some random mythic from what set was it? I can't even remember.
Was it one of those Zendikar sets?
Yeah, it was.
I think.
Zendikar sets. So that's Mindbreak Trap. If those who don't know it, if an opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you may pay 0 rather play this spell's mana cost. Exile any number of target spells. So like against your Storm decks, against your sort of cast loads of artifact sort of decks to try and combo out your Belcher sort of strategies, that sort of stuff. It's more of a legacy vintage All-Star. But this is a really nice reprint, and it's a reprint that probably is quite needed in these formats.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you're happy it's reprinted because of the cost. Some Magic cards definitely cost a little more than they should, and I'm really happy to see a lot of these reprints happening in this set. It's one of those things that we really needed. There's a lot of exciting ones, So for Mindbreak Trap, we have Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is a staple card in a lot of formats, and it's not overly expensive, but it's still 10-15 pounds a card. It's expensive. It's not something that you can afford to buy a bunch of. And there's a lot of little cards like this that we're happy to see again. So we'll see how exactly it affects the price. I'm not really sure how these extra list style other random set cards are going to be, how often they're going to show up.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see a reprint like this that hopefully makes Magic a little more accessible to everyone that wants to play.
But I don't like, speaking of this set though, like I don't think that this set is actually going to make Magic cheaper on the whole, because I do feel like a lot of these cards, particularly the way they've chosen to redistribute these cards or distribute these cards, are going to be quite expensive and quite scarce to get hold of. I mean, a lot of these archive sort of cards. What I keep forgetting
the Aftermath
big
set,
cards, Aftermath set, like they're at mythic level, but they're going to be. I'm not sure how they're distributed in the packs. Was it 1 in every 3 packs or something like that, or
something like that? I think it's 1 in every 5. But they did say that they're going to show up at the same level that normal mythic cards do, supposedly. So we're not quite sure. We'll get a little more info from Wizards as time goes on. But hopefully it does help a lot of these things. And, like we were saying before, just go and have fun. Get absolutely destroyed by little Timmy who pulled Oko, Thief of Crowns in your pre-release. And have some fun with everything that's going on with Outlaws of Thunder Junction.